Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Exploring the Paranormal. I am super excited to be here, as I always am every Tuesday morning. So if you're watching today, thank you for being here, and make sure you comment with any questions you have for myself or my guests. We're going to talk about all things paranormal and anything else that may come up during the show. And also, if you are watching the replay, thank you for catching the replay. Make sure to leave your comments and questions, and I will make sure that either I answer the question myself or I get the question to my guest so he can get you that answer. So before I continue babbling, like you guys know I end up doing quite often on this show, I am going to bring in my guest. So welcome, Jay, to the show. It is so glad to finally meet you face to face.
Yes, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Lee is joining us. Hello, Lee. Thank you for joining the show. One question I do always like to start my guests off in, because not all of my followers always know the different guests that I have, is can you just kind of talk a little bit more about you, what you do, and kind of give insight into what got you into the paranormal?
My name's Jay Hill. I'm the producer and creator of Studio 6 Media Productions. Basically, I started out with a podcast called Studio 6 Paranormal, and for about 3 years. It was a learning show. I did a lot with great interviews with a lot of great people. I learned a lot with that. I just ended that last fall, I do believe, and I went on to create Cemetery Files podcast with Kelly Schaefer, who's my other host, and yeah, that's been a really successful show. I've had some, great episodes with that. I also do. I have a couple other people under my Studio 6 banner. Bree Hollingshed is also part of Studio 6. She is Paranormal Road Tripping with Bree. If people don't know who that is, you can Google that. So yeah, she's been a great supporter of Studio 6, and as well as I am a supporter of her stuff. So I also do an audio podcast called Paranormal Triangle with Kelly Schaefer and Dave Taylor from Our Haunted Lives on Paraflix. And that is probably a couple times a month, which are really fun shows. I also do paranormal psychic walkthroughs for paranormal teams who need a medium in their investigations and are trying to find out other information that they don't or they can't access. And I try to fill in the gaps for that, which is something I really enjoy doing. It's all about kind of like helping people and helping paranormal teams and this and that. Me being a medium myself, I was born that way. I didn't get into my gifts until later in life after my health scare. I had a stroke in 2013. And after that, things kind of changed. And my gifts really started opening up because I stopped quitting, or I stopped drinking, and I stopped doing everything and started taking care of myself more. And the fog in my brain kind of cleared up. And so I was able to see things in a different way. I am just about to start a book that is going to chronicle my life as an addict and as a medium and as just life in general, and some of my experiences that coined the phrase of paranormal investigator or psychic medium. And I really paranormal has always been in my life. It's been around me. There's no two ways about it. I couldn't, escape it. I tried many times, but it was always there, and I was always aware of it, And so I always wanted to get more into the paranormal, but life in general just kind of took precedence, and I really didn't know how to go about it until later on. And once I realized the path I was on was not the right path, and now I believe that I'm on the right path. And I try to maintain that the best way I do. I deal with my depression. I deal with seasonal depression. I do, I've dealt with all these being a sensitive and a medium. My emotional rank is pretty high because I am sensitive to a lot of different emotional things that are around me. So it's battle at times, but I try to keep my circle small. I try to surround myself with people who are supportive, lifting, as well as good friends, family, and so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, well, definitely let me know when that book comes out because I want to read that.
Yes. Yeah,
Definitely.
hopefully it'll come out. Hopefully it'll come out next year.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
I'm hoping
from experience, book writing, it takes a while. So you take your time on it, make it perfect, and it's going to be great. Yep. And I know I'm going to have you on a future show. We're still setting the dates for it about podcasters. But one question I did have that I get a lot, which is why I'm hosting that special show, is a lot of people want to know, how could they set up their own podcast? Are there any tips, advice, whether it's paranormal or not paranormal? That, like I said, that seems to be the number one question I get.
The best advice I could give people who are just starting a podcast is to keep it simple. You don't have to go out and get all the expensive equipment. You don't have to, do it off your laptop. Some people who really want to go all into it, feel free to, buy what you want to buy. If you can afford it, sure, but it's really keeping it simple is when you start out, and, just making it so that it's, the clarity of your audio, and, what you're going to talk about and what your topic is. And, just basically don't overthink everything. It's not like you're going to roll up a desk like Jimmy Fallon and you're going to interview somebody. It's, these things take time. So keeping it simple, starting it small, and then, kind of work your way up. You're going to learn in the ins and outs. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have glitches. You're going to have, so those are all to be expected. So don't get discouraged.
That almost sounds like the same advice I offer investigators when they're just getting into the field when it comes to all the tech that they can choose from.
Right. Yeah. A lot of the tech that's out there now, especially for the paranormal, it's kind of, pick and choose, or like I usually like to do is I use my own gifts and my body as my tuning fork, so to speak. There's a few things that I use. I mean, there's stuff that I have in cases that I just need to get rid of because I don't ever use them. I could probably make a car payment with those.
Yeah, I know. I tend to stick with my, like you said, myself, and then non-tech tools. I like the dowsing rods, the pendulums, and then, of course, digital voice recorder and video camera. So that way you can document whatever happens.
Yep. I agree.
So now switching gears into the medium aspect of it. I know when it comes to psychic abilities, that's one thing I know I have, but I've suppressed mine just because I love to research. So I don't want to use, my psychic abilities going in and having done all this research because I just don't think that's fair because I have insight into stuff. So when it comes to research, do you do any research or do you let someone else do that for you?
I let somebody else do that. I don't do anything. Yeah. Especially if it's somebody that wants to basically quote hire me, so to speak, to do a walkthrough or a virtual walkthrough or something like that. I don't want to know anything. I don't want to, and the validation for that is just that is payment enough, to make sure that it lines up with what it is. I have my other host on the Cemetery Files, Kelly Schaefer, she's a researcher. She also has gifts, but when she does research and she does ancestral research, she's had history where ancestors have come to her and said, that's wrong, that's right, that's wrong, don't know where you got that from, so she's actually found, shed some light on some ancestral researches that she's done for people, and where they later on found out that what they thought they didn't know, they were able to actually document what they told her, or told them, so yeah, it's just different, I mean,
Right.
I don't like to, I like to do research, but I kind of feel like I'm short-sighting myself if I do too much research,
Yep.
so
Yeah. That's always been one of those things where it's like, it's because I'm prior to doing, actually in the beginning of my paranormal, I was a journalist. So I was always deep diving and researching, and it's kind of, natural for me to do that type of thing. And I do have experiences when I go on investigations where it's like, oh, it's, an experience that I have that matches up with the research. But then I think in the back of my head, am I having this experience because I did the research? So it's
right.
that's why I just don't even use my abilities whatsoever.
No. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you right now, being in this field, especially, for the research and all this stuff that you do, your gifts are going to probably eventually going to want to come more forward than you realize.
Right.
It's kind of, you got to look at it this way. It's like stopping a bunch of, like a tidal wave with a dam that's built with sticks. Okay. So it's going to eventually come through more so. And I've had that happen to me. I didn't want to necessarily adhere to the gifts that I had. And I was afraid more or less of what society would say, family would say, and all that. So it was kind of like, it's a battle for anybody that's out there that have gifts or think that you have gifts, research it. Do your research, find a mentor. I had one, and yeah, it just, there's different steps and things that you can do that can, make yourself feel more assured instead of I'm crazy. No, you're not crazy.
Right.
It's just, it's a normal thing, especially nowadays. Everything is upside down. So why not?
Yeah. Yep. Especially if it brings you comfort. Because I know I've had some experiences that have nothing to do with any paranormal research or anything that have brought me comfort. So.
Right. It's an emotional, it's a feeling that, it's not so much that you think about it, or, it's more of a knowing than a feeling.
Yep. So. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why my Wednesday show that I host, Ghost Education 101, we work so well, because Philip is a psychic medium. So he takes that side of it, and I take the research side of it when we do our shows. So it's a good fit to have the mix like that too. And I mean, going back to the feeling, I mean, like I said, it was an experience that I had, 2018 is I was diagnosed with stage 5 kidney failure, and my grandfather came to me one night and said, it's not your time.
Right.
And ever since then, I've never had surgery, never had any treatment for it. And now I'm free and clear of it. So
nice.
it's amazing. Congrats. How, thanks. And I view that as a combination of the psychic abilities, because no one else in my family has seen them. So it was one of those, did he come to me because he knew I needed it, or because he knew I could see him?
Right. I think it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my opinion, but it's just, people need to realize that it's spiritual paths are something to adhere to, I mean, it's just, when you get sucked in the world and you get sucked in what's going on the outside in society and all this other stuff, it's kind of like, man, my wife went to Kenya for a couple weeks or a month or something like that years ago. And when she come back, she said, everything changed. Everything, nobody cares about the things we care about here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, they don't worry
Yeah.
about the people driving down the street with road rage. They don't care about that. They don't. Everything was so simple that she just, and it's true. I mean, you take the society out of you, and then you kind of go with inside yourself. Surround yourself with the things that are going to help your brain and help your mind and your
Mm-hmm.
sense of peace. And yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. We had a similar experience. We went to, no, I'm trying to remember which country, but it was in Mexico. And
mhm,
we took a cruise there. And one of our shore excursions took us up into the mountains to a small village that had like a population of 20. And they didn't even
mhm,
have a town doctor. The town doctor would come to the town square once a month and treat everybody. And it had this cute little old church, but just the residents would come out and greet us, and they were just laid back. They loved being in the middle of nowhere. And it was such a peaceful feeling being there. I didn't want to leave.
mhm. Right, right.
So, yeah.
It's those feelings that people need to adhere to. When you
Mm-hmm.
find that somewhere, when you're out and about or whatever, if you can try to harness that feeling and try to just
Mm-hmm.
internalize that and find out when you go home, try to find out how can you replicate that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's evidently that's something that your body needs or that your body can grow from.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Actually, we do have a quick question on the topic that we are on. Is what happens when you can see and predict things like death and you don't want that gift, and when you tell someone what you see or know, you're rarely wrong.
It depends. I have not been able to predict death. I don't. That is one of the things that I don't do. Is I am not one to predict somebody's death or see somebody die. Or I've had a premonition of something where somebody will eventually go, but
Mm-hmm.
I had an aunt that I knew that was gonna die, and that feeling. And when the phone rang, I knew what it was. But that was a
Mm-hmm.
teenager,
Right.
you know, and that is the research that somebody needs to do. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
research what happens if by predicting things like death and this and that, if that's something that is part of your forte or your gift, then research it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I I don't predict things like death. I basically, if I give somebody a reading and I'll say that I see things in your future, or I'll see things coming up soon and certain dates, not to say
Mm-hmm.
what it is. I usually get a good feeling of happiness or whatever. Sorrow and death, I'm not privy to those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I never have been. And maybe that's something that I asked not to be privy to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
Yeah, and I know for me, the closest that I've come to anything like that, a lot of my stuff comes to me, it starts off in dreams and then carries out through the rest of the day.
right.
And I
Hmm.
remember one night, my youngest son, he was only 6 months old, and he's 20 now, but I had a dream that I didn't know who it was, but it was a significant male figure in my life had passed away. And
Hmm.
I woke up immediately and called my mom to see, if my
Hmm.
dad was okay, because that was the only person I could think of. And then later that night, my uncle, who is my godfather, passed away.
Hmm. Mm,
And it almost scared me, the fact that the two went hand in
right.
hand and were so close to each other as far as happening.
Hmm. But it's not something that you predicted. It's just something
Right.
that you experienced after the fact. And
Right.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I've had that
Yeah.
happen as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
um, I had a dream. Well, it was a dream, and my friend's dad had passed away. I knew he was sick, but I lived in
Mm-hmm.
2 states away, and I knew he was sick, and he always had to have blood transfusions, and because he was diabetic, and it was just really bad. I didn't know how bad because I hadn't seen him in
Mm-hmm.
years, but he came to me in a dream and said, "I want to thank you, for your friendship with my son and the family, and coming to see us all the time, and this and that,
Mm-hmm.
da da da." And it was just an acknowledgement of friendship and saying thank you for being there for my family for this or that, whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. Right.
When I didn't know it, but then like a month later, I went to go visit my friend, and that's when he told me that when he died was the time that I had that dream was when he died. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I've had a couple of those after the facts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not too keen on predicting things, especially
Right.
death. I'm more or less if it's something that's positive that's coming up, you know what I mean? Because I think death
Mm-hmm.
is a private entity all its own.
Yeah.
And I don't think that mediums should have that ability to predict or, give a message. Oh, I think you're going to die. Or I think that, this person says this, or I don't think that that is adequate. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
think that
Right.
as mediums, we are supposed to, give positive messages and give things. If there's something that's going to happen that person should watch out for, yes, I agree that
Mm-hmm.
health issues or whatever, to try to help prevent something getting worse, I could see that. But as far as death, that is a private moment for every individual, and yeah, that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I asked this question of one of my guests a couple weeks ago is when you're out and about doing just your own daily errands and stuff like that, have you ever had whether a premonition or a feeling and it was about someone you were near that you had no clue who this person was? Did you ever feel like you had to tell them what you knew? Or do you just kind of go on and
Um,
mind your own business?
I am I I'm not like Long Island medium. I have been in in places before because a lot of it people don't understand too is that most mediums usually ask for permission to read somebody
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
it's an invasion of privacy. You go up to somebody and you say, "Oh, can I tell you something?" And I see this or I see that. Number one, you didn't ask that person for
Mm-hmm.
that approval because when mediums read into people, they could see a lot of different things. And maybe people are private. Maybe people are just like, you know what? I don't want to be read. I don't want to, and I ran into people like that, and that's totally fine. But
Mm-hmm.
if you go up to somebody and you say, you know, is there some way that I can give you a reading? I'm just, I think I have a message for you if you're willing to accept it. If you're not, that's fine. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that way it kind of clears out I don't know, the negative, I guess. But I mean, it's just different. But I have
Mm-hmm.
coworkers and friends that I'll invade their space all day long, you know, and I'll
Right.
be, I'll be saying this, that, and the other thing, and then they freak out because they're like, "Oh my God, you're looking into me! Stop!" Because I'll know if they're upset or if they're, or she's having a rough day at work or whatever, and I'll kind of, bring up certain things, and she's like, "Oh, how do you know that?" So never mind. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's one thing to do it with friends and coworkers and things that you're close to, but strangers that's a whole different story. Unless they've asked for it, or unless it's something that that they're going to be open to it, you still need to
Mm-hmm.
ask permission.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And it's funny when you're talking about friends and family and reading them. I get a friend of mine, he's in South Carolina. And every couple of weeks I'll get a message, "Are you okay?" And it's always on a day that I'm having a bad day. and
Mm-hmm,
and I'm
mm-hmm.
like, "How do you always know to check in on me when I'm having a bad day?" He's like, "The spirits tell
Yeah,
me." It's
yeah,
just
yeah. My
so
co-host
it's
Kelly
like
does the same thing. When I call her, and if I'm going through one of my spells or whatever, she'd be like, "What are you doing?" It's not, "Hey, how you doing?" It's, "What are you doing?" And it's like, you know, she chooses not to use her gifts in a way. She's a researcher, and
mhm,
she has different views on what she does.
mhm.
So she
Yep.
just, you know what I mean. But yeah, but she knows when I'm connected with, mediums know mediums, and I'm just gonna
Mhm,
say that, I could tell you who's this, who's that, you know what I mean, because it's just like a connection.
mhm. Yep, exactly.
So,
And before we move on to more paranormal and locate, because I also want to talk about some different locations you've been to, is as far as your abilities, do you do any type of psychometry or remote viewing?
oh yeah, yeah, I do. I both. Yeah, that's how I got my last job.
Okay. Right. And
Yeah.
then the last, I'm sorry, one more question on that one. But have you ever had a case or reading with someone that had you questioning why you still do this, whether it upset you or, because I know I've had clients in the paranormal field that have made me so sad because we couldn't help them
Hmm.
that it made me want to give up doing clients.
Right. You ask that question one more time because you were kind of cutting out.
Oh, sorry about that. Has there ever been
That's
a
it.
time where you've done a reading or worked with somebody that it was either so depressing, so sad, or so scary that made you
Oh,
want
yeah.
to stop doing what you do?
No, I don't think so. I don't. I used to have a paranormal team called Wisconsin Paranormal Research, and I learned a lot to the short time that I had that team, and I basically realized through trial and error what I did not want to do, which was
Mm-hmm.
I choose now. I do not do home investigations, residential investigations, because of the fact that number one, it's a personal place, a personal um, safe place for people. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I've ran into a couple different ones where these people were just trying to basically trap or trick the paranormal team to come there because of the fact they thought it was fun
Mm-hmm.
and they thought it
Yep.
was, this or that and everything. So I've ran into places where um, there was something very negative there that I didn't want to subject myself to. So
Mm-hmm.
I choose to do businesses, buildings, land, um, parks, stuff like that. Home residences, that's probably the only thing that I choose not to do anymore. Unless it's a remote view. If it's a remote view that I'm not there, that's different. Putting my
Mm-hmm.
physical essence someplace and doing it that way is opening myself up. Even though I'm protected as much as I am, it's still there's still a danger there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Doing it from a
Right.
distance, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, yeah, no, we've stopped doing residential cases for three main reasons for us. Completely different than yours to a point, but we've after being in a documentary, because my paranormal team is my family. So we were
Mm-hmm.
featured as a family of investigators in a documentary. We went to a location and they asked me where my film crew was, thinking that the film crew goes everywhere with us. And it's like, they don't follow us everywhere we go. We filmed with them
Right,
for 2 weeks and we were done.
right.
Um, Second, I had a client on the phone, no paranormal activity whatsoever in her home. We felt she was self-manifesting it. And
Mm-hmm.
she was just 75-year-old woman on the phone crying with me. I'm not crazy. Completely broke my heart. I was like, I can't do this again. She
Yeah, yeah,
completely
yeah.
broke my heart.
I have ran into that once, and it was similar. It was nothing
Mm-hmm.
that that I really couldn't. I mean, we went there and we tried to take care of the best we could, but if they
Mm-hmm.
had more activity, the person that was part of the reason why there was activity in the house was because the child was gifted,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw that a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that was another grandmother who called me on the phone and had said, uh, you know, this is going on, this is going on. I talked to her for about 5-10 minutes, and then I got off the phone with her. And this is the first time I ever got a ghost text
Mm-hmm.
where I had a text on my phone after I hung up the phone with her, and the voice or the text said, "Can you help us, or can you help me?" And
Mm-hmm.
I thought she was wanting to converse more, so I called her back, and I said, "Did you need something else?" She goes, "No." I said, "I got a text saying asking for your help," and she said, "No, my phone's been sitting here next to me while I'm watching TV." I'm okay. And then I realized who it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yep.
we helped and this and that. But the activity was still going on. There wasn't much left that we could really do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so we did everything that we thought we possibly could. But, you
Yeah.
and that's another thing too. Spirit says to me, you can't help everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some people that you can't help that just need a different path. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or you could try to set them on the path, but maybe it's somebody else that's supposed to help them. You know, You can pray for them, you can do whatever, but there's sometimes where people need outside help or somebody else. You know what I mean? It's not going to be you, and a lot of people don't realize that can't save everybody. So.
Yep. Yeah. And I know she's still trying to find. It's been 3 years because we ended the case just before we moved from Nevada to Florida, and she's still looking for a team that's willing to help her. And they, reach out to me, and I give them some of the information that I have, and I tell them, hey, go investigate to see if you get. But we were there twice, and we had no evidence whatsoever, except for we did get an EVP that was in her voice that said "get out," but the video camera was filming her, and she didn't move her mouth at the time we got the "get out," and it was in her voice. So, but other than that, there was
I ran into doppelgangers before. I ran into annoying at best is what they are sometimes. I mean, yeah.
So where are, out of all the places that you do investigate? Oh, go ahead.
I saw that somebody said spirit with a cross on Jay's cap.
Yeah.
Is that what it says?
Yep.
Huh. Okay. I couldn't read it. I was like, oh, okay. So I've investigated quite a few different places, not a lot, but there's been, I'm from a small town in Wisconsin, and it's a resort town. It's got a nice lake, and the building that I used to do my first podcast show was in a boutique hotel that was one of the first buildings built in the town, and it was kind of like a mansion, and it was from 1856, and so I pretty much kind of made myself accustomed to the spirits there and ran into quite a few of them on a different occasion, and actually had a friend of mine do a remote view on a TikTok once where she picked out everything I had known already, which was really kind of cool. But there's some other places that I visited. There's been a couple buildings that used to be like an insane asylum that was a small building in town, and I've gone to a couple different places that basically were just downtown, like businesses, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm more of a, if people call me, if people need my help, then yeah, I'm there. I kind of, when I gave up doing paranormal investigation or my team that I disbanded a few years ago, I felt like it wasn't what I was supposed to do. I've been to other things. I'm invited. That's great, but I don't actively go out and seek them just because I just don't feel that's what I need to do.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Everyone has their own path in this field, which is one of the reasons why I love it. Yeah. Lee wants to know what town in Wisconsin, because she's from Wisconsin.
Lake Geneva.
That's what I was thinking you were talking about. I lived there every summer. I grew up in Woodstock, Illinois.
Okay. All right.
So, and
my dad was born in Woodstock, actually.
Okay.
My dad was born there, so. Yeah, Wisconsin's got a lot of different weird, strange stuff.
Exactly. Yep. And I noticed a lot of people I have on my show are from there. I know Barnaby Jones and Resnick are from Wisconsin, I believe. Lee, correct me if I'm wrong. But because they have Wisconsin Caps is the name of their, and they do cryptid research.
Oh, wow. Yeah, the Mark Joe show, that was the first podcast I was ever on. And yeah, those guys were really cool.
Yep. Nice. Oh, I didn't even know some of the Bigfoot Beach Lake State Park.
Yeah, that's right. 5 minutes from my house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I actually work
Yeah.
at Bigfoot Country Club. It's a
Okay.
private Bigfoot Country Club that
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of activity, and it's on Native American land. And yeah, it's just, that's how I got the job. I remote viewed it years ago when I was on my team,
Mm-hmm.
my Wisconsin Paranormal Research. Somebody called me and said, you need to check out this country club, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, call them and find out. While she was calling it, I was remote viewing what that place looked like on the inside. And I saw
Mm-hmm.
the pillars, I saw the windows, and I saw a man in a corner standing there with a dark brown suit on and a hat. I'm like, oh, nice. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm going to work at another place and a new job, and I had the job. Everything was like hunky dory, and then the last minute, the lady said the chef didn't seem to think that you were a good fit. Thanks for your time. And then I was like, okay. So when I talked to another medium friend of mine, Susan Hill, who's not no relation, but she's a good friend, and she said, I see that you're going to someplace that's surrounded by Native Americans. And at that time, I hadn't even applied to that job yet. And then
Mm-hmm.
she said, oh yeah. She's like, yeah, it's a good, this is where you're supposed to be. I'm like, okay. So then I got the phone with her. I looked on Indeed, found this place, didn't put two and two together until I got the interview.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the interview, I was standing in the same spot that I remote viewed 3 years prior
Mm-hmm.
and saw the pillars, the windows, and the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, oh wow. And so, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, that almost reminds me, deja vu. Deja vu is, do
deja
you,
vu.
yeah, is it one of those things where I'm still like torn on what it actually is. I know it's the feeling that you've been somewhere before, but could you have that feeling because you either accidentally remote viewed and didn't know it, type of thing, or just, a past life, I guess?
Um, Maybe past life, but
Mm-hmm.
um, deja vu for me causes me major anxiety. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I, in other words, it's kind of like having a panic attack, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I've ever since I had my stroke, every time that I would get deja vu like that, it would cause me a major panic attack. Before
Mm-hmm.
that, I just would recognize it and say, "Oh, that's weird." But
Mm-hmm.
this time, now it's just like, yeah, I have to completely just stop and focus on something else because
Mm-hmm.
it does for some reason it having that or knowing it's coming, and I'm like, okay, this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm going to be familiar with, and then I have to try to focus myself out of it because I don't want nothing to
Right.
do with deja vu. Nope. Mm-mm.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling, especially when it feels very real. Like almost like you have tactile
Right,
experiences in that location in the past and you've
right,
never been there.
right. That I've actually been where when I go to certain places like that, um, and I get that it's not deja vu for me. It's my I feel beside myself, like there's two of me.
Mhm.
What
Okay.
happens is when I walk into a building and I feel separated, disconnected, like part of my spirit is like standing next to me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
standing here, and I'm like, I've either been there or I've experienced something in here, or I know somebody in here that has ran across me
Mm-hmm.
in this life or last life, or also if I would go into a friend's house or somebody's house that had a lot of negative activity like abuse,
Mm-hmm.
that also causes me to step outside myself because it's a
Mm-hmm.
negative emotion that just affects me.
Right.
Stress and anger and frustration and abuse and all that stuff. It's kind of like I'm removing myself from that because it's almost like getting out of the way. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? It's almost like somebody shooting a gun at you, but it's full of negative emotions, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
nope, nope, I'm going to sidestep that, and that's exactly the way it feels.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Interesting. So, with all of the things that you do, whether it's the mediumship, paranormal investigations, all of it lumped together, what is your favorite part about what you do?
Helping people.
Mhm.
helping people find answers, um, inspiring people, um, helping people realize that they are worth more than they give themselves credit for, you
Mhm.
know? So it's not in the paranormal per se, but it just as a person, you know, the paranormal is just to me is just something else I do. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate all the people that do support me and Studio Six and all my stuff. So, but if it's one thing, it's just helping.
Mhm. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I view it the same way, whether you're training someone
Hmm.
with, information and, or, helping them with a case or anything like that. It's always, it's a good feeling. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
The other good feeling I always say is when you bring someone who's a skeptic with you and they experience their first paranormal encounter and they're no longer a skeptic.
Yeah. Right.
The look
Yeah.
on their face is priceless.
I've got a few of those friends that I've taken um, to an investigation, and
Mhm.
still, um, the skeptic. Oh, a friend of mine. He he went through the list of things that it could have possibly, and then he was still days later. It could have been this, could have been this, and it really racked his brain. He didn't
Mhm.
understand what had happened, you
Mhm.
know. But
Yep.
um, yeah, just real quick story with him. We went
Mhm.
to an investigation, and he had never been on an investigation before. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a big skeptic. And um, he didn't really run into anything per se, but on his phone that was in his pocket that was off, random text of gibberish came through and was sending it to another friend of his, and that he hadn't messaged him in weeks
Mhm.
and couldn't figure out what it was. And it wasn't, how did that happen? So
Right.
he's still trying to wrap his head around that.
Mhm.
And I think it could have been something paranormal. I don't know, but it's one thing like
Mhm.
that it's the person who's a skeptic scratch their head more so. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I think my dad's the same way because he supported what I did, but he was always skeptical and just never wanted to hear any of the stories that I had to share. And then I want to say it was around the time that his mother died, my grandmother died. He's all of a sudden started asking me questions. How does this happen? Why would this happen? He read all of my books that I've written so far and then talks about them to me. And it
Hmm.
kind of makes me wonder if he had an experience that
Could
kind
be.
of has him asking
Hmm.
questions, but he just doesn't want to admit that he had an experience because he's always
Right.
been
There's a
the
lot of those
skeptical one.
closet experienced people, that
Mm-hmm.
have had experiences but
Right.
dare not speak of it
Right.
because of the repercussions or the I told you so's or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's it's an
Mm-hmm.
individual choice. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I'm still trying to get the nerve to outright ask him, but I just kind of let him, he's interested. He's asking questions now, and he's even going into coming up with different theories. So
Hmm.
he's like, maybe we should test this theory.
Right. Right.
Almost like he's trying to find the answers.
Right.
Yeah. So okay. And trying to think. We have about 15 minutes left. So do you have any projects coming up? Because I think we had talked at one point and you had said that you had some things in the works, but I didn't know if you were able to talk about anything yet.
Yeah. I'm working on a documentary, which is a historical, like an old west documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Pioneer and Bloodshed. It's
Ooh.
basically the the negative evil spirits or the disgruntled spirits of the old west. Which there's plenty of them, and
Mm-hmm.
there's certain places that I would like to go to investigate and to experience and to try to document. But I wanted people to kind of learn a little bit some of the history that wasn't spoken of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could get some of that through some of my readings, the buildings or the land or whatever, and people can try to document that. That's part of the reason why I want to do that. I had a couple campaigns going. It really didn't go anywhere, which is fine. Maybe it's just not the right time, but I do want to be able to make this documentary, because I want to be able to create this documentary with Studio Six Media Productions, and I want to be able to create like a documentary in the Old West, uh, like the Civil War,
Mm-hmm.
other traumatic events or things about in history, that I want to try to document on a different side of the view of what happened there, instead of just the standard of what people are, reporting or just saying. You could narrowly just keep everything simple and say, okay, this is for a good documentary, but I want to be able to kind of go beyond that. I want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to talk about things that people necessarily don't want to talk about, but it's part of history. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's one of the projects that I'm working on, and it's a big project. And yeah, the other project I still can't talk about because we're still working on it. Me and Kelly are still kind of putting it all together. And once it gets together, probably in the next couple months, we'll be able to make an announcement about it. But yeah, and that goes back to helping,
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, for those of you watching, we still have a few minutes. If you have any questions, get them in now. And one last question I do have for you is I know you had talked about advice for someone starting a podcast, but what kind of advice could you offer someone who's newly coming into their abilities?
That goes back to research. Research what you want to know about, what your intentions or your intuition is telling you,
Mm-hmm.
how you feel or how you think, what avenue do you want to go and explore, and find people that support that idea of whatever you want to research. Find a mentor, find somebody who is in like-minded, who is like-minded, and who is going to be very supportive of you. There are a lot, and I mean a lot, out there right now, which I call armchair mediums,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like armchair quarterbacks. Okay. Now, I'm not naming any names. I'm just saying that is something that is kind of plagued the mediumship group right now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the world, because of the fact that everybody wants to be a medium. That's well and good. But if your intention is to just make money, you're in the wrong business, because
Mm-hmm.
that is not what mediumship is. Mediumship is not to make money. Make money, but it's not your sole purpose. If this is, oh, I'm going to tell this person this and he's going to pay me this, he's for those people that are just trying to do that, you're going to be surprised, because what comes around goes around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm going to say about that. But for people who are researching and trying to find out, more about themselves, look into yourself. Look into yourself and try to find out what it is that either A, makes you happy, or B, what direction you want to go for something, like to help people or to help a location or something like that. And then just kind of keep notes, keep a
Mm-hmm.
diary, keep a journal, document your journey in this. If you're just exploring your gifts, then you want to keep that in a journal, because you never know, it may make for a good book someday, and it may
Mm-hmm.
help somebody else who's years down the line may read that book and say, I wondered how to get this started, I wondered about
Mm-hmm.
this and for some reason that person wrote that book, and voila,
Yep.
so.
Exactly. And then one question I do like to ask people, but I always forget to ask on most shows, is what are your thoughts? This is a highly debated topic. What are your thoughts on orbs?
Take them or leave them.
Yep.
We did a episode on Paranormal Triangle
Mm-hmm.
with Kelly Schaefer and Dave Taylor about orbs. That was our first show.
Mm-hmm.
It's 50-50 for me. I mean, I've ran into some different things I can't explain.
Mm-hmm.
I've ran into a lot of dust. a lot of bugs, a lot of different things. But there have been certain times we recently had on our last show that we did about haunted playgrounds on Paranormal Triangle. David in his office, he had something there that looked like, it didn't look like dust.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look like an orb. It looked like it looked like a dust bunny, but it wasn't. Okay.
Right.
Because his wife cleans really well. And so, yeah, he says, and Kelly saw it. My other host saw it too. And I couldn't explain what it was. We'll come to find out that it was more or less, there was somebody there from an event that happened, that somebody was kind of watching over things. And I'm like, and Kelly got the same thing. So I'm 50-50, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to just say, for the most part, I would say 80%, 85%, it's probably dust, you know, or even 90% it's probably dust, you know?
Yep. Yeah. I'm still on the fence to a point, but unless I see it with my own eyes, I'm still kind of very skeptical on video and photography aspect of it. But I've seen one, it was in Gettysburg. It was flying over Triangular Field. And it was this big bright green orb that looked, you know, probably big enough to be 2 full humans in that size, just kind of floating across the field. And it was very interesting. But photo and video didn't pick it up.
I can't rule it out. A lot of people can, but it's just easier. It's easier to take the high road with that because, like I said, 85-90% of the time it is dust.
Right.
But you know, there's a small percentage that you can't explain. I've got one on a picture of one from the mansion in Lake Geneva here, that when we did an investigation, that I snapped a picture of it, and there was no reflective surfaces or no nothing, and this thing had color and substance, and it wasn't dust.
Right.
So, you know, like I said, I'm 50-50.
Right. No, you can definitely tell that it's dust. I haven't had it, you know, they all have the same type of format. When you zoom in and people say they see faces, you can see that it's like, you know, the composition of either the pollen or something like that, or you can see the legs of the bugs.
Right.
But when you can't rule out the standard checklist, you know, are there legs, or is there this, and this, then it's you know, what could it be?
And that's the glorious thing about today's, you know, society and life, is we all have opinions, and they're just opinions.
Right.
You know, it's not set in stone, you know, and anybody that wants to argue over orbs, find a better topic.
Yep. I've left so many groups because that's all the group was. It was just, you know, arguing over orbs. And it's like, you know, I don't even give my opinion on them anymore.
No, I don't really either.
But and it's funny too, because every guest I've had on, they have similar answers, but they're all a little bit differently. So it's funny how everyone has their own, and that's one of the topics in this field that is, I guess, you know, debated so, I guess, angrily.
Yeah, everybody is different. That's what everybody needs to realize, is that we are not all searching for the same exact thing. Other people are doing ITC. Other people are doing EVPs. Other people are doing orbs. Other people are doing spirit photography. You know, there's so many different facets in the paranormal world that, you know, we're all looking for the truth or the proof of something. And a lot of people have found certain things here and there, but it's not a science. Some people are trying to make it a science so where it gets a little bit more organized. That's fine, but everybody is different. Everybody has different opinions. It's not any use to fight about it.
I know. We need to go back to the old respect, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. I'm trying to, I don't want to say accept everybody, because, you know, that's, you know, we should to a point, but you can't blindly accept people. Right.
People are different, so they're going to do what they want to do. And if you don't like that, then don't interact.
Right.
That's free will.
It's like in Facebook, you're not forced to be in that group.
Right. You're not forced to stop and look at that page. How dare you? You know?
How dare they make me do that? So
Right.
we're going to start closing up, but do you have any way that people can contact you, find you, get more information about what you're doing?
Yeah, people can find me on Studio 6 Media Productions on Twitter or X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find me there. You can find me on anywhere you get your podcast. You can find the Studio 6 Media Productions or the Paranormal Triangle with Dave Taylor and Kelly Schaefer. Or you can find us on the Cemetery Files page on Facebook as well as Instagram. Anybody that wants to contact me or to find out for more information on my documentary, you can send me an email at spiritualrealms0101@gmail.com, and we can talk about it. jd.hill on Facebook. So yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Perfect. And when I upload the replay tomorrow on YouTube, I'll make sure to include all of that in the description. And then I'll also share that information on Exploring the Paranormal page so people can see that and know how to follow what you're doing. Okay. So again, thank you for being on the show today. I truly had a great conversation. And it's funny, I think we've been friends on Facebook for years, but we've never really talked face to face.
I know, right? That's the funny thing about Facebook. Your friends you never knew you had.
I know, exactly. So it was definitely great having you. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. And make sure you follow us on Exploring the Paranormal Show, and you can catch the replay on Heatherly PhD over there on YouTube. And then February 20th, that should say February 27th. I will have Russell Reynolds on the show as my guest. So join us next week for our show. He has some interesting things to talk about. And I believe he is a cousin of Ed and Lorraine Warren, is what he said when I talked to him briefly before booking him. So again, Jay, thank you so much for being on the show. Looking forward to having you on future shows. And if you need any help or need any locations for your documentary, let me know, because we did film Real Haunts Ghost Towns out in Goldfield. And
that's
all the Nevada
one of my
towns.
Stops.
Okay. And I know the owner of a mine out there that he let us investigate inside the mine.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We'll definitely be in touch, because I can get you some contact information out there, because we lived out in Vegas for several years. So
sweet.
Okay.
I'm all about it.
Again,
thank you very much, everybody.
Yep. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.